In the early 2000s, Nokia wasn't just a phone company, it was the phone company. If you looked around almost anywhere in the world, chances were that someone nearby was carrying a Nokia phone. The company dominated the mobile industry and controlled a huge share of the global market. Nokia? Phones were famous for being reliable, durable, and nearly impossible to break. For millions of people, Nokia wasn't just a brand, it was a part of everyday life. At its peak, Nokia seemed unstoppable. Competitors struggled to keep up. Customers loved its products, and the company generated billions in revenue. If you had asked people back then which company would rule the future of mobile technology, most would have answered with one word: Nokia. But then something unexpected happened. Within just a few years, the world's most powerful phone company began collapsing. The company that once dominated the industry started losing customers, market share, and relevance. So how did a giant like Nokia lose everything? The story begins with success. When a company becomes too successful, it can start believing that its position is permanent. Nokia had spent years leading the AS mobile phone market. It had built a business model that worked incredibly well. As a result, many executives believed they understood exactly what customers wanted. But technology moves fast. In 2007, a major event changed the mobile industry forever. A company called Apple introduced the iPhone. At first, many people inside the industry didn't take it seriously. Compared to Nokia's huge product lineup, Apple had only one phone. Nokia executives reportedly believed that touchscreens were not practical and that customers would continue preferring physical keyboards. But they underestimated something important. The iPhone wasn't just a new phone, it was a new vision of what a phone could become. Instead of focusing mainly on calls and text messages, Apple transformed the phone into a powerful pocket computer. It offered a smooth touchscreen experience, an easy-to-use interface, and eventually an ecosystem of apps that changed how people interacted with technology. Consumers loved it. Suddenly, expectations began to change. People no longer wanted phones that simply made calls. They wanted devices that could browse the internet, watch videos, play games, and run applications. This was the future, and Nokia wasn't ready for it. One of Nokia's biggest problems was its software. While competitors were building modern operating systems, Nokia continued relying heavily on Symbian. Although Symbian had been successful in the past, it struggled to compete with the simplicity and user experience offered by newer platforms like iOS and Android. Customers noticed the difference, developers noticed the difference, and slowly the market started shifting. Another problem was decision-making inside the company. As Nokia grew larger, it became harder to adapt quickly. Internal teams often disagreed about the company's direction. Important decisions took time and innovation slowed down. Meanwhile, competitors were moving fast. Apple continued improving the iPhone. Google introduced Android, giving manufacturers access to a powerful smartphone operating system. Companies like Samsung quickly embraced Android and began producing smartphones that appealed to millions of customers worldwide. The competition wasn't standing still, but Nokia was struggling to keep up. Instead of leading the smartphone revolution, it found itself reacting to changes that others were creating. And in technology, being late can be extremely expensive. As smartphone adoption accelerated, Nokia's market share began falling. Year after year, more customers switched to competitors. The company that once seemed untouchable was losing ground at an alarming rate. Then came a desperate attempt to recover. In 2011, Nokia partnered with Microsoft and adopted Windows Phone as its primary smartphone platform. The move was intended to help the company compete against Android and Apple's iPhone, but the strategy failed to deliver the results Nokia needed. While Windows Phone had some strengths, it struggled to attract enough app developers and users. Consumers were already heavily invested in Android and iPhone ecosystems. The gap continued growing. Eventually, Nokia's smartphone business became too weak to survive. In one of the most shocking moments in technology history, Nokia sold its mobile phone division to Microsoft. For many people, it felt impossible. The company that once dominated the world had fallen. But here's the interesting part. Nokia didn't fail because it lacked resources. It didn't fail because people stopped trusting the brand. And it didn't fail because it had no talent. Nokia failed because it underestimated change. The company became comfortable with its success while the world around it evolved. It focused too much on protecting what had worked in the past instead of building what would work in the future. And that's a lesson far bigger than Nokia itself. History is full of companies that believed they were too big to fail, but in technology, no position is permanent. Innovation doesn't care how successful you were yesterday. The moment a company stops adapting, it gives competitors an opportunity to take its place. Today, Nokia still exists, but it's no longer the mobile giant that once ruled the world. Its story remains one of the most powerful examples of how quickly technology can change and how dangerous it can be to ignore the future. The company that once owned the mobile phone industry didn't lose because it was weak. It lost because it failed to recognize that the rules of the game had changed, and by the time it realized the truth, it was already too late. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to Future Decoded for more technology, AI, and business stories that shape the world we live in today. Because the future isn't just happening, it's waiting to be decoded.